They say love is blind, but loneliness will convince you a bar girl's smile means forever. I didn't plan on getting her pregnant. I didn't plan on her mother, brother, cousin, and 3 noisy nephews moving into my rented house either. But when your heart is starving, even chaos can feel like love. "My name is Sinchain," Miri answered. "I came to the Philippines searching for peace after Margaret died. Instead, I bought myself a front row seat to a drama I couldn't afford, financially or emotionally. What I found was a hurricane, and I was standing right in its eye. 20 years of retirement money, gone in 6 months along with every shred of dignity I thought I had left. "You look sad, sir," she said that first night at the Coconut Bar, her English careful but clear. Her name was Angel, which should have been my first warning, but grief makes you stupid in ways you don't expect. She was maybe 25, with kind eyes and a smile that didn't quite reach them. Working girls in Angeles City all had that same smile, I'd learn later, but that night it felt like she was seeing something in me that no one else had bothered to look for. "My wife passed away last year," I told her, nursing my 3rd San Miguel. "Cancer. 34 years together. I don't know why I shared that with a stranger in a bar halfway around the world, but the words just tumbled out. "I'm sorry," she said, and something in her voice made me believe she actually meant it. "What was her name?" "Margaret," I said, and for the first time in months, saying her name didn't feel like swallowing glass. Would have loved this place. The food, the people. She always wanted to travel more. Gentile listened. Really listened. Not just waiting for her turn to talk like most people do. When I told her about Margaret's garden back in Ohio, how she'd spent her final summer planting flowers she'd never see bloom, Angel's eyes got wet. "She sounds like a beautiful person," she said quietly. She was. I looked around the bar, at the other expats with their much younger companions, at the neon lights reflecting off empty beer bottles. "I don't know what I'm doing here, honestly. My kids think I've lost my mind." "Maybe you just need to find yourself again," Angel said. "Sometimes we have to get lost before we can do that." The wisdom in her words surprised me. This wasn't what I'd expected from a bar girl in a tourist town. We talked until the bar closed, about her family in a small village north of Manila, about how she was saving money to help her sick mother, about dreams that felt too big for the life she'd been born into. When she asked if she could see me again the next night, I said yes without hesitation. For the first time since Margaret's funeral, I had something to look forward to. Walking back to my hotel that night, the warm Filipino air felt different somehow, less suffocating, more like an embrace. Angel had given me something I'd forgotten existed: hope. I should have known that hope, like everything else beautiful in this world, would come with a price I couldn't afford to pay. "You're different from other men who come here," Angel told me on our 5th night together. We'd fallen into a routine. I'd show up at the Coconut Bar around 8, buy her drinks, and we'd talk until closing time. She never pressured me for anything more, never made me feel like a transaction. Most men, they only want one thing. But you listen, you care about my stories. "Your stories matter," I said, and I meant it. She'd told me about her daughter back in her village, a 6-year-old named Isabella who lived with Angel's mother while Angel worked in the city, about the school fees she could barely afford, about her mother's diabetes medication that cost more than most Filipinos made in a month. "You're a good mother, Angel. Isabella is lucky to have you." The way her face lit up when I said that made something tight in my chest loosen. Margaret and I had never had children, her choice one I'd respected, but sometimes regretted. Seeing Angel's devotion to her daughter stirred something paternal in me, something I'd thought was buried with my wife. "I want to show you something." The photo she showed me was of a little girl with Angel's eyes and a gap-toothed smile, sitting in what looked like a one-room wooden house. "This is Isabella. This is why I work so hard." "She's beautiful," I said, studying the photo. "She looks just like you." "I send money home every week," Angel continued, "but it's never enough. The house needs repairs, Isabella needs school supplies, my mother needs medicine. Sometimes I wonder if she'll ever understand why I'm not there, why I had to leave her." Without thinking, I reached for my wallet. "How much do you need? For this week, I mean." Angel's eyes widened as I pulled out 5,000 pesos, more than she probably made in a month at the bar. "Sir, I cannot take." "It's not for the bar," I said firmly. It's for Isabella, for your mother. Let me help." When she started crying, I knew I'd done the right thing. These weren't crocodile tears. This was real relief, real gratitude. "Why are you so kind to me?" she asked, wiping her eyes with a bar napkin. "Because kindness was the last gift Margaret gave me," I said. Even at the end, when she was in so much pain, she worried about everyone else. The nurses, the other patients, me. She made me promise to keep being kind after she was gone. Angel reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "She raised a good man." "She didn't raise me," I laughed. "She married me. Somehow convinced a stubborn Ohio farm boy that he was worth loving." "You are worth loving," Angel said, her voice soft but certain. "Any woman would be lucky to have you." The words hit me harder than they should have. It had been so long since anyone had seen me as more than just a grieving widower, more than just another lonely expat, drowning his sorrows in cheap beer and cheaper company. Angel saw something in me that I'd lost sight of myself. "Would you like to have dinner tomorrow?" I asked. "Not here, somewhere nice. A real restaurant." Her smile was radiant. "I would love that, Jason." As I walked back to my hotel that night, the 5,000 pesos felt like the best money I'd ever spent. Not because of what it bought, but because of what it represented. The chance to matter to someone again, to be needed, to make a difference. I was already planning our dinner, already thinking about what else I could do to help Angel and her family. For the first time since Margaret died, I felt like I had a purpose again. "My cousin Rico needs surgery," Angel told me 3 weeks later, her voice heavy with worry. We were having dinner at a nice restaurant in the mall, the kind of place where they served real steaks and the air conditioning actually worked. I'd been taking her out properly now, treating her like a girlfriend, instead of just a bar girl. "His appendix, the doctors say it will cost 50,000 pesos. I nearly choked on my beer. 50,000 pesos was almost $1,000, a significant chunk of money even for someone with my retirement savings. "That's a lot," I said carefully. "I know," Angel said, her eyes filling with tears. "I already gave them everything I have, but it's not enough. If we can't pay, Rico will die. He's only 19, Jason. He's like a little brother to me." I watched her cry, watched the genuine anguish on her face, and felt that familiar tug in my chest. This was what Margaret would have wanted me to do. Help someone in need, be the kind of man who didn't walk away from suffering. "What about payment plans? Can the hospital work with you?" "Philippine hospitals don't work like American hospitals," Angel explained. "No money, no surgery. Cash up front or Rico dies." She reached across the table and took my hand. "I know I have no right to ask, but Jason, you're the only person I know who might be able to help. I'll pay you back, I promise." Every practical part of my brain, the part that had managed a small business back in Ohio for 30 years, raised red flags. 50,000 pesos was a lot of money to loan to someone I'd known for less than a month. But the louder part of my brain, the part that had been isolated and grieving for over a year, whispered that this was what caring about someone meant. This was what love looked like. Sacrifice. Putting someone else's needs before your own comfort. "Where is Rico now?" I asked. "At the hospital in San Fernando," Angel said quickly. "They're keeping him stable, but they said we only have 2 days before—" She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "I'll need to see the medical records," I said. "Talk to the doctors myself." Something flickered across Angel's face, too quick for me to identify. "Of course," she said. "We can go tomorrow morning." "Oh, Jason, thank you. You're saving his life." That night, lying in my hotel bed, I stared at the ceiling and tried to figure out why I felt uneasy. Angel's story made sense. Medical emergencies were expensive everywhere, but especially in developing countries. Her tears had been real, her desperation genuine. So why did something feel off? Maybe it was the timing. Just last week I'd helped her pay for Isabella's school fees, 10,000 pesos. The week before that it was her mother's medication, 8,000 pesos. Before I knew it, I'd given Angel almost 30,000 pesos in 3 weeks. That was more than I'd planned to spend in Philippines in 3 months. But then I thought about the photo of Isabella, about Angel's face when she talked about her family, about the way she'd held my hand when I told her about Margaret's final days. This wasn't some elaborate con game. This was real life, messy and expensive and unfair. Angel wasn't trying to take advantage of me. She was drowning, and I was the only life preserver in sight. I rolled over and tried to sleep, pushing down the small voice that wondered if 50,000 pesos would really be the end of it. Tomorrow I'd meet Rico, see the medical records, and put my doubts to rest. Tomorrow I'd prove to myself that love wasn't always a mistake, that sometimes kindness really was just kindness, even in a place like Angeles City. "There's been a complication," Angel said. Her voice shut off so suddenly. I was getting ready to leave for the hospital to meet Rico and review his medical records. When she called, the doctors moved him to intensive care. His appendix burst. My stomach dropped. "Is he going to be okay?" "They don't know," she sobbed. "The surgery is more complicated now. They need to clean out the infection, repair internal damage. The cost went up to 120,000 pesos. 120,000. That was over $2,000. Money I had, but money that represented months of my retirement budget. "Angel, slow down. Let me come to the hospital. We'll figure this out together." "No," she said quickly. "They won't let anyone see him right now. Family only. But Jason, they need payment today or they'll stop treatment. Today." The urgency in her voice made my chest tight. I'd dealt with medical emergencies before, with Margaret's cancer treatment, and I knew how quickly things could spiral, how hospitals could become cold and bureaucratic when money was involved. "Okay," I said. "I'll transfer the money. Which account?" "Rico's mother has the account," Angel said. "I'll send you the details." Within minutes, my phone buzzed with bank account information. The name on the account was Maria Santos, presumably Rico's mother. I stared at the banking app on my phone, my finger hovering over the transfer button. 120,000 pesos. It was more money than I'd ever given to anyone outside my immediate family. But what choice did I have? Let a 19-year-old kid die because I was worried about my retirement fund? I made the transfer. "Thank you," Angel whispered when I called her back. "Jason, you saved his life. My family will never forget this." That afternoon, I tried to visit the hospital anyway. I wanted to see Rico, to meet his mother, to feel like I was actually part of this family crisis, instead of just a distant acting. "We don't have anyone by that name in intensive care," she said, checking her computer twice. "Maybe he's under a different name," I suggested. "Santos is his mother's name. The patient is 19, appendix surgery." "Sir, we haven't performed an appendix surgery this week," she said gently. "Are you sure you have the right hospital?" I stood in that sterile hospital lobby for a long time, my mind racing. Wrong hospital. That had to be it. There were several hospitals in the area. Angel had probably misspoken, given me the wrong information in her panic. I called her immediately. "Angel, I'm at San Fernando Hospital, but they don't have Rico here. Which hospital is he at?" There was a pause. "Oh," she said finally. "I'm sorry, I meant San Fernando Medical Center, not San Fernando Hospital. Different places. Okay, where is that?" "In Manila," she said. "They transferred him to Manila because they have better equipment." Manila. 2 hours away. The engine... "Everything happened so fast," she said, and I could hear her crying again. "I'm so scared, Jason. I'm at the hospital now with his mother. She's falling apart." "I'll drive to Manila," I said. "I'll be there in 2 hours." "No." The sharpness in her voice surprised me. "I mean, visiting hours are over soon, and Rico's still in surgery. Maybe tomorrow." After I hung up, I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot for an hour, trying to make sense of what was happening. Why had Angel given me the wrong hospital? Why didn't she want me to visit Rico? Why did every answer she gave me raise 2 more questions? The rational part of my mind whispered what I didn't want to hear, that I'd just sent over $2,000 to a stranger based on a phone call, that I'd never actually seen Rico, never met his mother, never verified that any of this was real. But the louder part of my mind, the part that was desperate to believe that something good could come from Margaret's death, that her insurance money could help save a young man's life, shut down those doubts before they could fully form. Tomorrow I would drive to Manila. Tomorrow I would meet Rico and his mother and put these fears to rest. Tomorrow I would prove to myself that love and trust still existed in this world, even in the most unlikely places. I never made it to Manila. Angel called me the next morning before I could leave, sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. "Rico died," she said. "Last night. The surgery. There were complications. He's gone." The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd failed him. I'd sent the money too late, or not enough, or something had gone wrong despite everything. "Angel, I'm so sorry. I should have done more. No, she interrupted. You did everything you could. My family knows that. His mother wants to meet you, to thank you personally. Of course, I said. When is the funeral? Next week. But Jason, there's another problem. Her voice broke again. The hospital bills, even with the money you sent, there are more charges. For the intensive care, the additional surgery attempts, Rico's mother can't afford it. I felt sick. Even in death, this kid was costing his family money they didn't have. How much? 60,000 pesos, Angel said quietly. I know it's a lot. I know you've already done so. But they won't release his body for burial until the bills are paid. 60,000 more. I'd already spent almost 200,000 pesos, nearly $4,000, and now they needed more. But how could I say no? How could I let a teenager rot in a hospital morgue because of money? I'll take care of it, I said. That's when the parade began. Over the next 2 weeks, Unveiled introduced me to more family members than I could keep track of. Rico's mother, Maria, who wept when she met me, and called me Kuya, big brother. Rico's younger sister, who needed money for school uniforms, since the family had spent everything on hospital bills. Angel's own mother, who had traveled from the village and needed help with her diabetes medication. An uncle, who had lost his job and couldn't feed his children. Each introduction came with a story, a crisis, a need that only I could fill. And each time, Angel would present the situation with such genuine tears, such obvious love for her family, that saying no felt like a betrayal of everything decent in myself. Philippine families are different, Angel explained one evening, as we sat in my hotel room, surrounded by the financial carnage of my kindness. When one person has good fortune, they share it. Everyone. When you help... I looked at my bank statements, at the steady drain of my retirement fund. In 6 weeks, I'd spent almost $8,000. Not on myself, not luxuries or adventures, but on medical bills and school fees and groceries for people whose names I could barely pronounce. Angel, I said carefully, I need to slow down a bit. I want to help, but I have to be smart about my money too. Something shifted in her expression. What do you mean? I mean I can't keep giving thousands of pesos every week. I'm retired, not rich. This money has to last me the rest of my life. But my family depends on you now, she said, her voice small and hurt. Isabella asks about Uncle Jason every day. My mother prays for you every night. You're part of our family. The guilt was immediate and crushing. These people, these struggling, desperate people, had welcomed me like blood. They'd made me feel needed, important, loved in a way I hadn't felt since Margaret died. How could I abandon them now? I'm not abandoning anyone, I said. I just need to budget better, plan things out. Of course, Angel said, but her smile was different now, cooler. I understand. You have to take care of yourself first. That night, alone in my hotel room, I tried to calculate how much money I had left. The numbers were terrifying. At this rate, my retirement fund would be gone in 4 months. I'd have to go back to Ohio, find work again, figure out how to survive on Social Security alone. But every time I considered cutting Angel off, I thought about Isabella's gap-tucky smile about Rico's mother weeping in gratitude, about Angel's face when she talked about her family's struggles. I'd become their lifeline, their salvation. How could I live with myself if I pulled that away? Maybe tomorrow I'd figure out a sustainable way to help. Maybe tomorrow I'd find the balance between generosity and self-preservation. Tonight, I just lay in bed and tried not to think about the steadily shrinking numbers in my bank account. There's someone I want you to meet, Angel said, bringing yet another woman to our dinner at Jollibee. This one was older, maybe 40, with tired eyes. This is my Aunt Lisa. She's like a second mother to me. Aunt Lisa smiled and immediately launched into her story. Her husband had left her with 3 children. She worked in a factory, but the pay wasn't enough. Her youngest daughter was sick with pneumonia and needed medicine. She'd heard about the kind American who was helping Angel's family and wondered. I looked at Angel, who gave me that same pleading expression I'd seen dozens of times now. The expression that said I was their only hope, their last chance, their miracle. How many family members did she have? How many cousins and aunts and neighbors and friends who were like family needed help? How much, I asked, though I already knew my checking account was running dangerously low. Just 15,000 payments, Angel said quickly, for the medicine and doctor visits. $15,300. I'd given away more than that for lunch money at this point, but something in me snapped. I can't, I said. I'm sorry, but I can't keep doing this. The silence at the table was deafening. Pelisa looked confused, hurt. Angel looked shocked, like I'd slapped her. Jason, she said softly, this is my family. I know, but Angel, I've given your family over $10,000 in 2 months. I've paid for Rico's hospital bills, your mother's medicine, Isabella's school fees, your rent, your cousin's wedding, your uncle's motorcycle repair. I stopped, realizing how insane I sounded. When had helping become an endless list of demands? You're keeping track? Angel's voice was cold now. You're counting every peso you've given us? I have to, I said desperately. Angel, I'm running out of money. I came here to retire, not to support an entire village. Alisa stood up abruptly. I think I should go, she mumbled, clearly embarrassed. After she left, Angel and I sat in silence, the cheerful Jollibee music playing mockingly in the background. I thought you cared about us, Angel said finally. I do care. That's the problem. I care so much that I've given you almost everything I have. Everything you have? She laughed bitterly. Jason, Americans think 15,000 pesos is everything. You spend more than that on dinner some nights. That's not the point. What is the point? She interrupted. That you're tired of helping poor Filipinos? That we're not worth your precious American dollars anymore? The accusation stung, because it felt both unfair and somehow accurate. I wasn't tired of helping. I was terrified that I was being taken advantage of. But how could I say that without sounding like every ugly stereotype of the point is that I need to be smart about money, I said, weakly. I need to make sure I can take care of myself too. Angel stared at me for a long moment, then gathered her purse. I understand, she said, but her tone said she understood nothing at all. Maybe you should go back to America, Jason. Maybe this place isn't for you. As I watched her walk away, I felt something break inside me. Not my heart. That had been breaking slowly for weeks. Something else. Maybe my faith in my own judgment. Maybe my belief that I could tell the difference between love and manipulation. I sat in that Jollibee for 2 hours after she left, surrounded by happy Filipino, families wondering when helping people had started to feel like drowning, wondering if Angel had ever cared about me at all, or if I'd just been the loneliest ATM in Angeles City. I didn't hear from Angel for 3 days. 3 days of silence that felt like relief and agony all at once. No phone calls asking for money, no emergencies that required immediate attention, no family members who needed saving. Just me, alone in my hotel room, trying to figure out what the hell had happened to my life. On the 4th day, I decided to walk around Angeles City to get out of my head and maybe gain some perspective. I was passing by a small restaurant when I saw them through the window. Angel, sitting at a corner table, laughing with a Filipino man about my age. Her hand was on his arm, intimate and familiar. She was wearing the dress I'd bought her last week. I stood there on the sidewalk, frozen, watching them. The man reached across the table and touched her face tenderly. She leaned into his touch like she'd done with me so many times. Then he pulled out a thick envelope and handed it to her. Even from outside, I could see it was full of cash. My stomach turned to ice. I pushed through the restaurant door, moving on autopilot. Angel looked up as I approached their table, and for a split second I saw pure panic in her eyes before she composed herself. Jason, she said, her voice carefully neutral. What are you doing here? I could ask you the same thing, I said, looking between her and the man, who was studying me with obvious amusement. This is my friend Roberto, Angel said. Roberto, this is Jason, the American I told you about. Roberto grinned and extended his hand. Ah, the generous American. Angel has told me so much about you. His English was perfect, educated. Thank you for taking such good care of our girl here. Our girl. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Our girl. Roberto is helping me with some business matters, Angel said quickly, but her voice sounded strange. Rehearsed. What kind of business requires that much cash? I asked, nodding toward the envelope Roberto was still holding. Family business, Roberto said smoothly. You wouldn't understand. It's a Filipino thing. Try me, I said, sitting down uninvited. I've become quite familiar with Filipino family business over the past 2 months. Angel shot Roberto a look I couldn't read. Jason, you're making a scene. Am I? I looked around the restaurant. Several other patrons were indeed staring at us, but I didn't care anymore. Angel, I want to know what's going on. Who is Roberto really? Why does he have an envelope full of money with your name on it? You're being paranoid, she said, but there was something desperate in her voice now. Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like I'm not your only generous friend. I turned to Roberto. How much have you given her? How much has the kind-hearted American contributed to the Angel Santos Relief Fund? Roberto's grin faltered. I think you should leave, he said, his voice harder now. No, I don't think I will. I looked at Angel, really looked at her, and saw something I'd been too lonely and desperate to see before, the calculation in her eyes, the way she was already planning her next move. Is Rico even dead? Was he ever real? Angel's face went white. How can you ask me that? Because I went to every hospital in San Fernando looking for him, because I called the morgues asking about burial arrangements, because nobody anywhere has any record of Rico Santos dying of appendicitis complications. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Finally, Angel spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Jason, you don't understand. You're right, I said, standing up. I don't understand. And I don't want to anymore. I didn't confront Angel any further. What was the point? The truth was written all over her face. In Roberto's smirk, in the envelope full of cash that was probably mine, recycled back to her through God knows what kind of scheme. I walked out of that restaurant and back to my hotel, moving like a man underwater. In my room, I spread out my bank statements across the bed. 2.5 months in the Philippines. $18,000 gone. $18,000 that Margaret had worked for, that she'd saved from her teacher's salary, that she'd left me to live on for the rest of my life. Gone to pay for a dead boy who never existed. Medicine for illnesses that were probably fake. School fees for a daughter who may not even be Angel's. I thought about calling the police, but what would I tell them? That I'd voluntarily given money to a woman I'd met in a bar. That I'd been stupid enough to believe that someone like Angel could actually care about someone like me. In the Philippines, being an old fool wasn't a crime. It was just embarrassing. The worst part wasn't the money, though. The worst part was understanding what I'd really been paying for. Not Angel's love, not even her companionship. I'd been paying for the illusion that I mattered to someone, that my grief had made me wise instead of just desperate. I'd been paying to feel needed, important, valuable. And Angel had given me exactly what I'd paid for, right up until I couldn't afford it anymore. I thought about Margaret, about what she would say if she could see me now. She'd been practical about money, careful in ways that had sometimes frustrated me when we were younger. Money isn't everything, Jason, she used to say, but having enough of it means you don't have to worry about everything else. Now, I was 67 years old, with half my retirement fund gone, sitting alone in a hotel room in a foreign country, trying to figure out how to afford groceries for the rest of my life. Margaret's voice echoed in my head. Jason Mitchell, what have you done? I picked up my phone and called the airline. The next available flight to Ohio was tomorrow evening. I booked it without hesitation. Then I called my son David back in Cleveland. Dad, he answered on the second ring. Is everything okay? I'm coming home, I said, and my voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. Already? I thought you were staying in the Philippines for 6 months. Change of plans. I looked around the hotel room, at the clothes I'd bought for dinners with Angel, at the souvenirs I'd collected to show her family, at the life I'd tried to build around someone else's lies. David, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Sure, Dad, what is it? Am I a stupid man? Am I the kind of person who makes stupid decisions? There was a long pause. Dad, what's going on? Did something happen? Just answer the question. You're not stupid, David said carefully. But you've been different since Mum died, more impulsive, more trusting. We've been worried about you, more trusting. That was a kind way to put it. I'd become the kind of man who believed that loneliness was the same as love, that need was the same as affection, that being useful was the same as being valued. I'd become exactly the kind of mark that people like Angel looked for in places like Angela City. I'll see you tomorrow, I told my son. I'm writing this from my kitchen table in Akron, Ohio, 6 months after I came back from the Philippines with my tail between my legs. The coffee is instant and bitter, nothing like the rich Filipino brew Angel used to order for us at the mall. My bank account has stabilized at a number that keeps me awake at night, enough to survive if I'm careful, not enough to ever feel secure again. David helped me sell the house Margaret and I share. For 34 years, too many memories. too many rooms I didn't need, too much space for a man learning to live with the consequences of his own loneliness. I rent a one-bedroom apartment now, the kind of place I would have pitied when I was younger and thought I understood how the world worked. You can't beat yourself up forever, my daughter Sarah told me last week when she came to visit. Everyone makes mistakes, but she doesn't understand that this wasn't just a mistake. It was a revelation. I learned something about myself in Angeles City that I'll never be able to unlearn. That I'm the kind of man who confuses being needed with being loved, who's so desperate for connection that I'll pay any price for the illusion of it. Sometimes I wonder what Angel is doing now, if she thinks about the lonely American who gave her more money than she'd probably seen in her entire life, if she feels any guilt at all, or if men like me are just part of the ecosystem in places like Angeles, city natural resources to be harvested by people smart enough and desperate enough to do what needs to be done. I don't hate her. That might be the strangest part of all this. I understand her in a way I didn't when I was buying her dinner and believing her stories. She saw a grieving widower with money and loneliness written all over his face, and she gave him exactly what he was willing to pay for. In her position, struggling to survive in a country where the average person makes less in a year than I used to spend on Margaret's Christmas presents, I might have done the same thing. The loneliness is still here, though. It sits with me every morning when I make coffee for one, every evening when I watch television in a living room that feels too small and too empty at the same time. The difference is that now I know the price of trying to fix it with money, with neediness disguised as generosity. My biggest mistake wasn't falling in love, I tell myself sometimes, staring out at the gray Ohio sky. It was letting my loneliness believe it was enough. Angel never loved me, and I never really loved her. We just needed each other in different ways, and for a while, that felt like the same thing. Now I know better. Now I know that some kinds of empty can't be filled, no matter how much you're willing to pay. And maybe that's not the worst thing to learn, even if it cost me everything I thought I had left to lose.